does 100 mean to you?
Sure. If I was a cricketer, it would be a very impressive stat to have. But seeing as we're just a TV show, 100 episodes down is quite a milestone.
Jeez, you know, when we started all that time ago, I wasn't sure we'd get to 100.
Yeah, me neither.
It's been lekker, and we've had a huge variety of cars, lots of interesting experience, driven some brilliant roads.
Traveled to some great places.
So how bad can it be?
Yeah.
Question is, you hanging around for the next 100?
Are we going to make another 100?
Sure we are.
Back to the present at RPM, and life passes in a blur. Behind the wheel of Mazda's brutal MPS hot hatch, we test it on the Kyalami Grand Prix circuit. Then we take Kia's all-new Soul Mini MPV for a spin and find out that there's a lot to like about the newcomer. And finally, we visit the garden route to attend the inaugural Knysna Hillclimb, a time trial event with an unusual array of competing cars.
This is the Mazda 3 MPS, the performance flagship of the new Mazda 3 series. As you can see, it's not shy about showing off that status, and why should it be? After all, 190 kilowatt of turbo power should translate into tar-ripping performance. So, let's see if this car has what it takes to live up to expectations. Based on the latest Mazda 3 range, this second-generation MPS is a lot more in-your-face than the original, but under all those curves, creases and contours, the mechanical package is much the same, with a turbocharged four-cylinder engine still feeding up to 190 kilowatts to the front wheels. That's more than any other front-wheel drive performance hatchback. To better harness all that muscle and the 380 Nm torque peak that goes with it, Mazda's engineers have stiffened the suspension, sharpened the steering, revised the gear ratio set, and recalibrated the so-called torque management system. The result should be friendlier road manners, but there's nothing benign about the new car's appearance. The subject of styling is always a controversial and, in fact, a subjective one. For me, the MPS looks as if the designers have tried too hard. It oozes a lot of aggression, but the overall effect is over the top. Still, considering that this car's target market is the fast and furious crowd, it probably does press all the right buttons. Having said that, the new MPS has lost some of its individuality. The treatment is too fussy and the styling details look too much like aftermarket add-ons. That big bonnet scoop, the hungry air intake, the bright work in the front and rear light clusters, and the large rear wing are also all too reminiscent of the hatchback Subaru Impreza STI. Still, it's a shape that oozes aggression, helped by the low crouching stance, the big alloys shod with fat rubber, and obvious attention to aerodynamic efficiency. The twin exhaust tailpipes look sporty but emit a surprisingly civilized note, while that large rear wing not only offers welcome shade on a hot summer's day, but also contributes road-hugging downforce. One thing's for sure, the styling makes no empty promises. On the move, the MPS is an undiluted performance machine, and it certainly feels as fast and frenetic as those looks suggest. That theme extends to the interior. Given the extrovert exterior, it should come as no surprise that the cabin is very much in your face as well. The combination of the red trim accents and the blue illumination really make for a garish package, but at least the ergonomics are fairly functional and intuitive. Although, I have to say, this fascia does remind me a little bit of the flight deck of Battleship Galactica. There's certainly a sense of science fiction complexity to the cabin's execution, but for some, the extensive switchgear occupying the steering wheel and the dashboard might add to the Mazda's high-tech appeal, and it all works intuitively enough. The recessed dials of the primary instruments take center stage and always remain legible, while the grippy steering wheel provides sufficient feedback from the taut and responsive chassis. The bright hues may not be to everyone's taste, and there's still an overdose of plastic, but the overall impression is of a smart and quality-driven passenger space with a full house of mod cons to ensure occupant comfort. Standard kit includes partial leather upholstery with contrasting stitching, sexy aluminium pedals, dual-zone climate control, a trip computer, keyless entry and operation, Bose sound, and a full complement of active and passive safety features. The split-rear seat allows the 300-litre boot to be extended, while the spare wheel under the cargo floor is a space-saving Mari biscuit. But most of all, the purpose of the MPS revolves around dynamic potential, and it certainly has the power plant to match those intentions. At the heart of the Mazda 3 MPS is this 2.3-litre turbocharged four-cylinder engine, good for 190 kilowatt and 380 newton meters. That's a lot of power for a front-wheel drive car, and it's the reason why this car feels twitchy and busy if you get onto the gas too early. The MZR turbocharged engine has remained largely unchanged, but improvements to airflow and intercooler efficiency should make for more consistent power output, thanks to improved resilience to the hot and high conditions experienced at reef altitudes. Certainly our test car felt strong and willing throughout the rev range, with loads of urge out of corners, but harnessing the enthusiasm of this hot hatch is not that easy. The biggest challenge facing the MPS driver is to make the most of the muscle on offer. If you try too hard, all you get is the traction control intervening. Switch the traction control off and there's just too much wheel spin. Be too careful with the throttle and the car bogs down. So it really requires a deft balance between the clutch and the throttle to get this car off the mark properly. And if you do, you can expect an 0 to 100 time in the low 6-second bracket. Top speed, 250 kilometers an hour. In practice, the MPS gets off the mark with lots of gusto and tyre smoke and always feels rapid, not least because it's quite a handful through the twisties. To be fair, the stiffer suspension and more responsive steering have improved matters across the board, but the Mazda still struggles to get the power down efficiently despite the electronic torque control. Kid gloves and a careful foot on the throttle are the operative words here. The MPS can be a handful through corners, and you actually have to approach it quite carefully despite the fact that there's an LS diff on board. What you do is get into the corner fairly slowly and only boot it once you've got the car pointing in a straight line again. For the rest, the chassis provides ample feedback and actually has surprising poise. The big beefy disc brakes with ABS and EBD certainly help to tame the Mazda's urge when it matters, while the chassis is a substantial improvement over the first MPS. But it takes an extraordinary effort to harness the muscle on offer. I reckon there's a limit to the amount of power a front-wheel drive car can handle, and that limit is around 165 kilowatt. With 190 kilowatt, this car struggles with traction and getting the power down efficiently, and that ultimately means that it delivers a frustrating driving experience. On paper, the Mazda 3 MPS should be the king of the hot hatch sector. Power and torque maximums are class-leading, and the chassis features all the right bits, including unlimited slip diff. But in reality, the MPS remains fidgety, a beast that struggles to make the most of the power provided, and that despite improved steering and more consistent power. Decent value, though.
It's no big revelation that the world of cars is filled with more makes and models than you'd care to shake a stick at. It's as easy to find a German luxury SUV as it is a Japanese two-seater sports car or a high-end British saloon. Because of that, manufacturers are always trying something a little different to swing buyers their way. That means that not too long ago, the world would have turned up its nose at the likes of BMW's X5 or the Audi A5 Sportback, but because of the need to stand out, they are production realities. And so Kia have jumped on the must-be-different bandwagon with their Soul, a sort of MPV/compact city runabout/panel van. Okay, there's not much panel van in there, but the Soul does have an odd mix of styling elements. A raised stance and a squared-off front with a pretty utilitarian back in a city car package means that you can't really classify it as one thing or the other. And I'm not quite sure where that horrid vinyl graphic fits in, but thankfully you can order yours without it. But perhaps the strangest thing about the Soul's styling is that it all works. I'm pretty sure it won't please all the people all the time, but against its self-proclaimed competition, the likes of the Nissan Qashqai, the Suzuki SX4 and even the Daihatsu Materia, it does offer something different. I quite like the way the whole thing comes together. It's a chunky and well put together design that, while it defies description, certainly doesn't blend in. Of course, calling a car sold doesn't mean that it's got any, but the first impression is a good one. Now, this week I had the option of testing this car and another one, which shall remain nameless, and I was in two minds about which one I wanted to drive. But when this arrived at RPM HQ, my mind was instantly made up, and I couldn't wait to step inside and see how it all shaped up. The problem is that once I stepped inside, I was left wondering where all the excitement had gone. The interior is absolutely bog-standard dull, almost completely black and totally uninteresting. Given the shouty exterior, it's a real letdown. Even the plastics aren't that great. This test car has about 5,000 Ks on the clock, and already the wear and tear is very apparent. About the only thing to get excited about in here is the gear shift, which is a clear plastic bubble with some colour wrapped up in it. Woohoo! I mean, the ergonomics are okay and it does have full iPod integration, but still, the stupid thing about this interior is that it's screaming out for a bit of colour. And the only colour you get is hidden away in the little centre storage binnacle and the cubbyhole. If they can put red plastic in there, why not on the outside as well? It makes no sense. Who's going to drive around with the binnacle doors flapping about just so they can brighten up the cabin? Its only redeeming feature is the space. There's loads of it just about everywhere, although the boot is surprisingly average-sized. After my initial excitement about testing this car and then the sheer disappointment of the interior, I was hoping the drive would at least have something mildly impressive. But with a 1600 motor, there's not much room for impressive, unfortunately. The 16-valve unit puts out 91 kilowatts and 156 newton meters, which pushes this little big car to a top speed of 177 kilometers an hour and from 0 to 100 in 10.4 seconds. Like I said, not much room for impressive. Truth is, this little soul goes like most 1600s. You need to make sure you're in the right gear to get the best out of it, and the best means keeping the revs up. In-gear acceleration is decent enough if you stick to those rules, and overall it feels neither underpowered nor impressively powerful. The biggest thing that the Soul's got going for it is its ease of use. I mean, it's pretty simple to set yourself up for a comfortable drive, and the snappy gear changes and easy steering make for a decent enough ride setup. That's made better by the decent spec level. But still, it's not remarkable by any measure. It's about what you'd expect at the price. Going back to the competition I mentioned earlier, the only thing it offers over and above that lot is a unique look and a mid-range price tag. Everything else is rather unremarkable. I found myself being really disappointed because based on the way the thing looks, I was expecting so much more. Generally speaking, when you hear the phrase, "don't judge a book by its cover," it means you need to put away your preconceived ideas about something and let it prove itself. But with the Kia Soul, it's the exact opposite. I mean, the cover promises a whole lot of enjoyment, but the rest of the package just doesn't follow suit. It may be bundled up in fancy wrapping paper, but once you've torn all that off, it's no better than anything else in its class. And that makes it rather disappointing. The Kia Soul has all the potential of being a standout product thanks to clever packaging, ample interior space, and an easy, enjoyable driving experience. But the cabin could do with a more extrovert design, and the lack of sparkle extends to the ordinary drivetrain.
After the break, we head for the garden route to attend the inaugural Knysna Hillclimb, a motorsport event that attracted some fast and furious machinery.
If only everything stopped as quickly as tyres from Continental, engineered in Germany.
The coastal town of Knysna is best known for its tourism, its fancy holiday homes, its golfing estate, its oysters. It's not known for motorsport. Why? Because there really isn't much in terms of tracks around this town. However, that's about to change because the inaugural Knysna Hillclimb has brought some very interesting, fast and unusual machines to Knysna, and we're going to see them in action.
And action would certainly be the operative word, although more so for some than for others. This rare 1948 Peugeot Special single-seater racer was crippled by clutch problems and couldn't compete, but still managed a couple of demonstration runs. It belongs to the Franz Hoek Motor Museum. Not all the entries were as unusual, but the 45-odd competitors all faced an identical challenge, negotiating the fast, twisty and sometimes treacherous hill leading to the spectacular Simola Golf and Country Estate. The estate overlooks Knysna, its lagoon and the famous heads, and features a Jack Nicklaus-designed golf course, a 5-star hotel with spa and a number of exclusive residential developments. Measuring 1.8 kilometers long, the hill climb looked innocuous enough, but posed a stern challenge to the assembled machinery. Practice runs on the Saturday ensured there was ample time to get to know the course before the elimination rounds and final on the Sunday. The competitors were divided into 12 classes based on engine size, aspiration and drivetrain, and electronically timed from the bottom of the hill to the top. Hill climbs have long been an integral part of motorsport locally and internationally, and provide a simple but thrilling opportunity to pit man and machine against the clock. Anything goes, from road cars to racing machines. But how did the Knysna Hillclimb come about?
I had an idea for karting race. Another chap, Francis Cousins, had an idea for a hill climb, and we just got together. He phoned me one day, said, why don't we do this? And it sounded like a good idea. And there are a lot of petrol heads around, so it gathered momentum pretty quickly. Town Council, Knysna Tourism, Simola, the traffic police, the fire department, everybody have been so behind this event. And it's one of the great things about organising an event in this town is that everyone gets behind you. They all buy into the idea of events. They know it's good for the town. And without their support, we wouldn't have been able to do it.
For the spectators who gathered in their hundreds to watch the daring young and not so young drivers and their dashing machines, there was no shortage of action. Part of a hill climb's attraction is the variety of participating vehicles, and as the event progressed, the drivers became braver, really pushing their steeds to the limit. There's nothing quite like the sound of a well-prepared engine being revved to the limit and the rich aroma of racing fuel filling the air. As the practice sessions progressed, the times got better and better. Among the hard hitters at the sharp end of the timesheets were some four-wheel drive Subarus and a brace of AMG Mercedes-Benz sedans. The lighter C55 AMG was consistently quicker than the heavier CLS 63 AMG. And if that wasn't exotic enough, the pride of Italy was represented by a lone Ferrari F430 Spider. It proved to be a real crowd pleaser. Rally ace Enzo Kuhn brought a spectacular Audi R8 to Knysna and soon showed the gentleman racers how it's done by making the most of the Audi's Quattro all-wheel drive and the sheer shove on offer. This spectacular Ford GT40 replica is owned by property developer Alec Bates, who seemed to relish the challenge of competing in the event. We asked him about his steed.
It's a recreation of the 1966 Le Mans winning car, which was driven by Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon, hence why it's in the colour scheme of the New Zealand team. It is a true replica of that racing vehicle. It's got a 5.7 litre, 550 brake horsepower engine, and state-of-the-art suspension racing brakes. And it's brand new. I only picked it up from the contractor on Monday and drove straight down here on a trailer. And this is a baptism of fire, first time out.
But Alec's interest in the hill climb extended beyond that of a keen competitor. Recognizing the commercial potential of the event, he was also the sponsor of a spectacular prize, a 40,000 rand trip to his golf and beach development in Mauritius.
Because a lot of these cars are very special, very expensive, and it's very much our target market. And when we heard about it, we're delighted to be associated with it. And from what we've seen so far of the event, that we'd like to be involved next year and maybe up our sponsorship.
Somebody who had to up his game at the Knysna Hillclimb was motorsport legend Cyril van der Merwe. What started as a fun event was fast becoming a much more serious affair.
It really is a fun event, but I mean, any motorsport event turns serious at some stage, which this one has done. I think there's a very quick Subaru around here, and he's giving me a hell of a hard time. So yeah, it's a bit more than fun in it at this point in time.
The Subaru in question was the Trick 380 kilowatt Impreza WRX of Pretoria driver Anton Cronier, who had only one objective.
Keep Sarel behind me. Yeah, no, he's he's very competitive.
Yes.
And so I have to. The aim today is I have to break a 43. I think I have to go in the 42s to keep him behind.
Speed wasn't a high priority for this glamorous oldtimer, a V12-powered 1939 Lagonda Grand Prix racer painstakingly built up by classic car enthusiast Dickon Daggett. It was certainly one of the rarest machines in the field. Of particular note is the close attention to fine, authentic detail. We asked Dickon to tell us a little more.
I did what Lagonda did. I took a saloon, shortened it, and put this body on it and did all the other changes. So it is in fact identical to the racing cars, but it isn't one of the original two.
Magnificent looking car and quite spectacular to see out on the road as well. What is it like to drive?
Well, for a vintage car it's quite quick. We're managing a very healthy, slowest time of the day, but but yeah, I mean it's old, and but yeah, it's great to drive. A lot of fun.